then we can go back to sharing. There we go. All right. Okay, so thank you guys for coming. This is an opportunity for myself and Principal Avincula to answer some questions that we have been fielding as we've talked to parents, had phone calls with parents, and all different things. Obviously, this is not a complete list, but these are ones that seem to come up more than one time over the last few weeks, and so we thought it would be helpful for you guys to hear directly from us. And then, of course, if there are follow-up questions or additional information that you want, you can certainly reach out to myself. I'm Ann Swan, the Thrive Liaison. Sorry, I forgot to introduce myself. Or Adrian, and I'll let Adrian introduce himself.
Hello, Adrian Avincula. I'm the principal over at Meadowlark Elementary, starting my 3rd year here at the school. And this is my, I wish your husband was still here, Michelle, 21st year in education and 13th year as a principal here in the district.
Great. So we'll just jump right in. I guess I'll give a little bit of information about myself. So I'm, as I said, Ann Swan. I'm the Thrive Liaison over at Meadowlark. I am new there this year in this role. I'm super excited to be there working with the student, staff, and parents at Meadowlark. Thrive is a community organization that's been in Bozeman for more than 30 years, and we work in all of the elementary and middle schools and high school, running a number of different programs. So that is what I do there, and I am in touch with parents a lot and am a resource for questions and information or anything you can think of. So that is my role, but we'll jump right into the questions. Adrian, the first slide, I think, oh, it's just a pretty one. Thought it would be good to keep us on remembering that really that's what it's about, right? It's about wisdom and wonder, and kindergarten is all about that. All right, these are your questions, Adrian.
All right, so the first question on this slide is, when will parents know if we are moving to 5 full days of in-person instruction? From my understanding, our school board will be meeting this coming Monday, and on one of the agenda items is to determine if we are going to start in the month of November the 5-day schedule. It obviously will change where the kids are on a 2-day in-person, 3-day remote track to a 5-day in-person full class cohort. And by cohort, that means that even though they will be having their own specific teacher, when they go out and about to, let's say, like recess or lunch, they will be cohorted into another, another class, and we would not mix up those groups with other classes or other grades. Question number 2. Is there a Canvas support person for parents so we don't have to bother teachers if we have issues logging on? And Ann and I, we were talking to a couple of teachers today and a tech support person for the district. And I guess it all depends on what you need from Canvas. And if it's the curriculum aspect, if it's something that's specific to the lesson at hand within Canvas, I suggest you contact the teacher. They'll give you all the information that you need to help your child be successful in that assignment. And if it's something along the lines of a missing password that we can't figure out at the school level, if there's an issue logging on or finding a pairing code for your parent account to your student account, there is a lady who we can connect you to. Her name is Heather, and I always butcher her last name. This is her first year in the district, but she's a teacher on special assignment, and she's been tasked to help parents in Canvas support. And so what we can do, what we have been doing is we've either been forwarding emails to Heather, and also we've been giving her contact information to families. And so what we can do at the end of this, we can easily give that information to our kindergarten families here at Meadowlark. Any questions? I guess I should say if there's any follow-up questions, please stop me and I'll be more than happy to answer them. All right, number 3. If we return to 5 full days in person, what, if any, new measures will the school be taking to keep kids safe with more people in the building? That's a great question. It's a very tricky one because, you know, 2 things that we've been doing really well at, actually 3 things at Meadowlark is 1, making sure that we're wearing masks in the building and we're providing those mask breaks outside. 2, we're doing that physical distancing where students within the classroom, in specials, at lunch, we've distanced them 6 feet apart so that we take, you know, we follow the guidelines of our health department. And 3, we promote hand washing after every transition. So if kids are coming in from outside, they come in, we make sure that they wash their hands. If they're transitioning to a special like HE, they go and they wash their hands. They transition from HE back to the classroom, we make sure we do the hand washing because you know, those are those 3 key components that helps, I guess, flatten the curve. I'll use that expression. When we go to 5 full days in person, one thing that we're not going to be able to do is that physical distancing. Having 20 kindergartners in a class as opposed to 10, just within the structure of our room, we even tried to figure it out before kids came. We can't do a 6-foot physical distancing. So we just have to be very cognizant and cautious when we're doing lessons. So that lessons that include group activities or sharing manipulatives, we have to monitor that and limit the amount of time that kids are using and sharing those things. You know, the guideline that we've been following is that you know, that contact time of 15 minutes or more, we have to be mindful of that. So if we're using manipulatives or if we're doing lessons, we want to make sure we rotate that out and we sanitize and we clean and we hand wash. And you know, the nice thing with kindergartners, you know, their attention spans, as you know, it's much smaller than that of a 5th grader. And so the teachers, they do a lot of transitions within the class, and so they don't spend 30, 45 minutes to an hour on a lesson. They'll do it in 15-minute chunks. So those are some of the things that we have to consider and do when that physical distancing is not possible. Other things that we would include into making sure that we're trying to keep keeping their kids safe as best we can is those transition times. Students have a common transition time between their class and specials. What we would do is we would try to stagger that by cohort. So in this case, we have 4 kindergarten sections, 4 kindergarten teachers. If they're paired up with another teacher, we would try to stagger the times they go to specials. So like Miss Rasmussen and Miss Goodman perhaps would go a little bit, you know, would take their kids first to their specials, and then maybe we'll let 5 minutes pass, and then we'd have Miss Zimney and Miss Smith follow, and then we do the same thing when they return back to class. We would consider that too when we'd start having more students within the class go out to recess. Again, we do that staggering and that the use of a lot of different hand washing stations, so that we're not having kids congregate in one spot, and we're still following the guidelines of hand washing. And of course, when they're inside the building, we'll make sure that they are wearing their face coverings, their masks at any time, from coming in from recess, going out to lunch, anything along those lines. We just want to make sure that we're adhering to that, again, just to make sure that our kids are safe.
Great. Do you want to answer if the school returns in full person, will volunteers be allowed? I know that's a big question.
That is a big question. And so the guidelines and the guidance that we received from Superintendent Connors is that we would reassess everything between 30 to 60 days. And so right now we're reassessing this particular teaching model, this blended model, and we're seeing if we can go into a 5-day in-person model. what we probably do next, from my understanding, is once this is rolling and this is going, we would see, could we integrate volunteers. When we go into a 5 full day in-person model, we wouldn't start with any volunteers in the building. It still would just be school district personnel.
How about, I know I've had some questions about before and after school care. Any more information you have on that might be helpful for parents as they're sort of planning this potential transition?
Yeah, at this time, I think from at least earlier talks, what was going to happen is once we get to this 5 full day in-person model, the conversations between the school district and the after school program, United Way, those conversations would start happening, and we'd have that dialogue on how to create a safe and successful environment for the before school program and the after school program. So they would follow in that criteria of just reassessment in that 30 to 60 day period, or time frame, excuse me.
Right. The next one is about synchronously learning. Do you want to talk a little bit about that expectation for kindergarten students?
Sure. So one of the things that our district has asked our teachers to do is to teach synchronous and asynchronous lessons while the kids are remote. And so that's basically a live lesson. So like if I were teaching you all right now, this would be my live synchronous lesson, or an asynchronous lesson or recorded lesson, where I may record myself teaching some particular concepts and then post it to Canvas, and then you could access it at any time. What our curriculum department has asked us to do is do a slow rollout of that. Synchronous learning for kids, especially kindergarten students, just because not only are they learning all these new concepts, they're learning the routines and the ins and outs of school. As Michelle and I, as we were talking earlier on, there's a difference between an 8:15 start time and a 9:30 start time, and so just adjusting sleep schedules, when you wake up, when you have breakfast, when you transition to go to school, all that takes time, and learning just how to be a student takes time. So what we've done in the district is just make sure that we're doing a more of a thoughtful transition to a synchronous learning kind of style. So when we first started the live lessons, we did a minimum requirement of doing it for 5 minutes. 5 minutes at the least. You can go as long as you want, but a minimum of 5 minutes. And a lot of teachers chose to do something along the lines of a class meeting, where they're able to just get everybody on board, everybody on Google Meet, and then work as a class in this new environment. And then what we asked teachers to do is slowly build on that. So, learning the functions of Google Meet, learning the functions of how to operate a classroom within the setting. And then let's start looking at, teaching reading, teaching letter sounds and letter identification. And again, going up incrementally, from 5 to 10 to 15 minutes, and then also just adding more times to do that. So, and maybe instead of doing it 1 time this 1 week, we jump to 3 times. And then at the same time, we're providing packets and recorded lessons for families so they can access other things that our kindergartners need to learn.
And Adrian, if I remember our conversation from earlier with kindergarten teachers, really at this point, it's only been a week and a half of Canvas for kindergartners, and getting online and logging in is probably the #1 thing to make sure you've been able to do with your student. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, since kindergartners started a week after too, they, besides this thoughtful rollout, they're a week behind just the pace of everybody else, which is perfectly fine, because there's a lot of other skills and other things that our kids are learning, and we have to make sure that we acknowledge and honor all of those other things that they do in a school setting.
Right, great. Well, I think the last one that and you'll be able to chime in on the ones I have for me as well. But I had a few people asking about students catching up if they fall behind. How are teachers managing that? And then will there be any extra days added on at the end of the school year?
Yeah. Well, I'll start right now with the extra days. Right now, we're okay with the amount of student contact time that we're providing with our kids. So at this time, we do not need to add extra days. As far as how teachers are going to catch up students if they start to fall behind, we have a response to intervention model within all of our schools in the district. And so what that means is that, you know, if we're noticing kids that are struggling, or maybe kids that need that extra enrichment because they're just high flyers, you know, we identify those students, and our teachers meet in teams with other kindergarten teachers, with a reading intervention teacher, math intervention teacher. It could be our school psych or school counselor for social emotional needs that we need to discuss. I'm in those meetings, and same thing with our student support specialist. And we try to tailor lessons that could specifically work with that particular student and other ones. So we would create small group instruction where they could be taught by either another teacher or another paraprofessional, and most of our paraprofessionals within our building are actually certified teachers, and they're just gaining experience. And we would monitor that. We would do something called progress monitoring, and we just check to see if they're making that adequate growth so they can catch up. Because obviously, if we're just going at the pace of a typical school year, you know, just go like that. But if they're falling behind, we have to kind of increase that. I guess the best word to use is intensity, even though I don't like that word, just so that, you know, they're getting the skills, and we're hitting the standards, and we're hitting the concepts that they need so they can progress with their peers.
Great. Does anybody have any questions for Adrienne around these topics, or anything else that's on your mind kind of around Canvas, the way the school is working, any of those types of things? No? Okay. Well, we will just move on. Maybe if I can get my screen to move, there we go. I don't know if you guys can see this cartoon, but I thought it was pretty accurate, at least to what my house looks like right now. And so these questions are a little bit more on the pieces that don't relate to the way that the school is running while your student is there, but more about how the blended model is impacting your families, and you know, the resources and ways to kind of deal with blended learning right now, but in general. So the first piece I would say is that this is hard. This is hard for families. It's a complicated time, and each family has their own set of personal circumstances and ways that they're working through this. And everybody, you know, myself, Adrienne, classroom teachers, everybody knows that and is in that same boat. And I would then again encourage, if there are questions or things you're not sure of, don't be afraid to ask. Yes, there is a lot going on, but I would say 100% there's not a person that wouldn't want to hear from you if you're not sure about something, or uncertain, you know, how to access, or you know, what you're supposed to do, or you missed something and you're not sure who you go to. I had a question about, you know, who do I call, or who do I need to let know about being absent for a day, because that obviously looks different right now if you're absent remotely versus absent in person. So I'm gonna give you guys some of those contacts at the end, but don't be afraid to ask for help right now. Everybody needs it right now. There's just a lot going on. So kind of on that topic, one of the, I would say the biggest issues that I've been spending the last few weeks talking about, because I think it is probably one of the bigger issues that parents are dealing with, is just if you're a working parent who's working from home, or a working parent who's working outside of the home, or a parent who is a stay-at-home parent but has things that they do on certain days that now having your children home part of the week has made challenging. And so that is, what resources are available to help families on remote days while we're in this blended model. And there are quite a few resources out there. I'm not going to name all of them because there's quite a few, especially for K-5 students. But there is a website called outofschoolmt.org. And that is a website that United Way is managing that is putting quite a few of the resources for families out there. And these are anything from Kids Link, which is the program that usually runs our before and after school program, to Agape Care, to there's Farm to School now has a program that's running on some of the blended days, Montana Outdoor Science School, and lots of other organizations. And there's lots of different ones. Some are doing it where you can drop your child off for 3 days when they're on their remote days and they would get support, and others are particular days of the week. So if you have questions about that, or that's something you could really use some assistance with, I would love to talk to you because I can give you kind of more guidance on what I know about certain programs and how that would fit with your family, what you may or may not need. Because I know like I said, each situation is a little bit different. And then the other thing I would say on that topic is that, they're not free, but there are a lot of opportunities for scholarship. And because this is a time that parents didn't expect to be paying for extra care for their kids. So that is an expense that most families feel in their wallet. And so there are scholarship opportunities out there that aren't as stringent as maybe things would be for a normal summer camp. So again, if that's something that you are looking for help on, or could use some more information, or maybe don't need it now, but might need it a week from now, depending on what happens, if we go back 5 days a week, or we don't, please get in touch with me. I can certainly help with that. Other resources, obviously, families are reaching out to neighbors and friends, making that network connection within their own social network. That's really good. I know that's really working for some families. So that's kind of what I know about resources for blended days. But again, please give me a call because there's a lot of other things out there. The other piece of this is if you are struggling with internet connectivity, that is also something that I am helping families connect with, because that looks a little bit different for depending on where you live or what you have access to, or all those things. So those types of resources I can certainly help connect you with what is going on in the community. The next piece that came up for a few different parents is that, their child loves going to school, loves the actual in-person schooling, but when they get home to do remote schooling, it's a little harder to keep them motivated. They don't seem as interested, or, it's mommy or daddy, not my teacher, so I'm not paying attention. So just a couple of things I wanted to touch base with on that. Again, this is overwhelming, and the vast majority of us are not certified school teachers. So, the expectation that that's where you're coming from is not what's being expected of families. And I would say, even teachers that are certified are learning and growing and trying to figure these things out as they go. So, you're going to be faced with a little bit of things that you just don't know, and that's okay. So here's a few suggestions I can give you for that. Identifying any barriers to your children's learning at home, things that might get in the way of them being able to focus. If it's for 15 minutes or 10 minutes, even if something's going to be distracting for them, really think about those things that seem to get your child going. I know for me, some kids like music in the background. My daughter likes music in the background, so she's been playing, quiet music while she's studying, because that helps her focus and keeps her motivated. For my son, who is 17, that is the complete opposite. He wants complete silence. And this past spring, he and his sister were sitting across the table from each other, and she wasn't talking, but just by her being there and him seeing her, it was distracting to him. So we actually came up with just one of these little cardboard cubicles, 3 sides, where he could put it up around him. And that really helped for him to be able to focus. So kind of think about those things. You know, if there's a room in the house that's full of toys that maybe is distracting for your child to be in, maybe that's not the best place to try to do their remote learning. But again, that's going to look different for each family. You know, if you've ever walked into a classroom, and some of you have older siblings, so you've probably done this, but if you walk into a classroom at the start of a school year, teachers have desks lined up in a certain way, and you might go back in 2 weeks later and those desks are completely different. It's because they're figuring out what's working for the students in that class. So, you know, try something. If that doesn't work, try something else. Yeah, I don't think this is going to be a stagnant thing. I don't think it's going to be something that maybe works forever. It might work for a week and then you have to switch it again. I would also say, you know, try to establish some goals. They can be small goals for your student. It can be something that you're establishing for an hour or a day or a week, and then just try to make them achievable so that your child is feeling like they're being successful at their remote learning. So if it's just that logging on to Canvas for the first time and that is enough, they seem to be frustrated after that, then hey, they did that. They logged on their own. And for 5 and 6 year olds logging on, even though they're definitely technically more advanced than maybe some of us are, that can be a challenge and that can be a big win. So I would say set up those small goals and for your students. And then when they do something that, you know, you've asked them to do or that their teachers asked them to do and they've achieved it, you know, don't be afraid to give them some immediate and positive feedback and reinforcement that, hey, that I know that's not easy. Good job getting on. Or good job, you know, being on your meeting, or, you know, good job getting up early enough to make it to school on time. You know, really make them understand that those are things that you are noticing in them. And then another piece is just using that growth mindset. A lot of kids can get frustrated and say, I don't understand this. I don't know how it works. I don't know what my teacher wants. And I think you could reframe that as, you know, I hear what you're saying. I hear that you may not understand, but I just don't think you understand yet. So I think that keyword is yet, you know, letting them know that, hey, maybe you don't understand it. And they're kindergarten, right? They're in school for a reason. There's a lot of learning to be done. So I think by adding that yet, you're telling them that, hey, we can figure this out. And then the next question is, what do you think we need to ask or to find out to make this easier or for you to understand? So just kind of helping them understand that it's okay to not have the answers. You know, we're continuing to grow. And then I think probably the very most important thing, I think, for 5 and 6 year olds is just those brain breaks and really getting them moving. You know, I know that a lot of adults can not sit still for 15, 20 minutes in front of a Zoom call or sitting in front of a desk. That's hard. It's definitely hard for 5 and 6 year olds. And like Adrian said before, you know, they move around a ton in the classroom. So I think that expectation should be that they're going to move around a ton at home as well. So brain breaks with some movement is going to be super helpful to getting them to stay motivated. Any questions on that topic? Because I know that's one that's come up quite a bit. No, okay. And then the last one that I've heard quite a bit is just about managing working at home or being at home with younger kids and teaching your child, just sort of that organizational piece of remote schooling. I kind of say working from home and educating from home, like people are definitely getting to do both right now, or even just maybe there's a babysitter coming over to be with your child, and that is something, or they're going someplace else. What are some things that you can do to help that be easier for people? I think if your remote learning is happening from home and you are there with them, you know, and even if you're not there with them, if there's something else going on, and Adrian alluded to this before, routine for kindergartners is sort of the name of the game. And the more you can build in signals and routines to those days, the easier it will become over time. It's going to be a little bit challenging to begin with, but if you can be consistent with your routines, what you know, you're getting up at a certain time of day, you're doing certain things, and then if there's a signal to the start of the day, if you're at home, like what I do at my house is we're trying as close as we can to follow the school schedule. So 8:30 is that time of day. Now that's not going to work for everybody's schedule, but that's what I had to do to signal, okay, we're moving from being at home to being in school, even though we're still at home. So I would definitely say to look for those ways to build routine into that. And then I use a checklist or a whiteboard. I actually brought mine to show you guys. So I bought this at the dollar store in the spring because I was really struggling with keeping my daughter on task of the things that she needed to do. And obviously for kindergartners, the language piece isn't as advanced with older kids, but you could draw a picture, you could even write 3 words down, and it's as much for them as it is for you to keep track of, okay, today, you know, it looks like you need to do, you need to watch this video and you need to, you know, do this packet. You could just put something on a whiteboard or a piece of paper even, or something just to have it written down. And then I take great satisfaction in checking things off on a list. And I think other people do as well. And maybe you give your student a highlighter, and when they're done with that activity, they get to highlight that off, that, hey, that's done for the day, or they get to wipe it off. And that just is a way for them to visually see, and for you to be able to check in, or whoever's with your child for that day to check in with them. And then I also think one of the keys to staying organized with all of this is keeping your materials together in one spot. And that kind of goes back to, you know, do you have a place in your home that makes sense? But even beyond that, you know, is there a basket they can put their school supplies in? Is there a shelf that they need to put them on? If, you know, if you're in a place where you don't have an extra room, or we were working at our kitchen table all spring long. And so I wanted my kitchen table back at, you know, 4 o'clock. I didn't want to have school stuff all over it all the time. So I got baskets for the kids to put their stuff in. And that's where they went at the end of the day. And sometimes they would forget to put them in there, and I would put them in there at the end of the day. And then they'd say, where's my stuff? And I would say, well, it's in your basket. And so they finally got used to looking for it there. And then we weren't losing things as much. So I think really thinking about how your child thinks, I think, because at school, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of where does this go and where do you go for these things? So you're sort of mimicking that at home as well. That makes it easier. And then just sort of the last thing, and there's a lot of things on this topic. And again, I'm happy to have longer conversations with people about their specific situations, whether they're, you know, home remote learning or they're going off somewhere. But I think is to give yourself the time and permission to figure this out. Again, you know, you as kindergarten parents and students, you guys are just getting into this and really starting to see Canvas come home and some of the remote learning come home. Those first few weeks are really just about, you know, who is my teacher and where do I go for class? And I would say that's even harder right now because, you know, the kids are there 2 days and they're off for 5 days. So that's been, you know, a lot of the last few weeks. So I think we're starting to go into some of these other things, but give yourself the time and space to figure it out. And again, ask the questions that you need to ask to get the answers you need for yourself and for your child. And then take a break. Just like your kid's going to need a brain break, you're going to need a brain break too. And it is really good to model that for your child that, hey, you know, we've been working hard, but I need a break. I'm going to go to the kitchen and get a cup of coffee or whatever that looks like for you. Because even though we feel like we should have this figured out because it's mid-October, we don't. And things will continue to evolve and we will adjust with those. So it's okay to take it a day at a time. Any questions on those things? Adrian, anything you wanted to add? No?
No, and you did a great job. That's one of the things that one of the things that you did say, I try to share with our staff, and I try to remind myself too, not only as an educator, but also as a parent, just give yourself permission to know that it's not going to be perfect. Know that you will get frustrated, your child will get frustrated, and that's okay. And it's okay too if you don't get something that day that you're supposed to do an assignment. I think the connection that you have with your child is more important than finishing that one lesson. You could always try it again the next day, and you try it again the day after that, and they're still getting frustrated, reach out to the teacher and just say, hey, Adrian's having a hard time with this and we weren't able to get it done. And that's okay. So just remember to give yourself permission to not have to do everything, and not everything doesn't have to be perfect, and know that we are all figuring this out together.
Yeah. So kind of on that note, the last piece I wanted to share with you guys is, who at Meadowlark is there to support you. Obviously, with not being able to come into the building, you're not seeing these people in person. And if you haven't been at Meadowlark before with an older child, you may or may not know, who's there for you. And there is a lot of information coming home right now. I know that. If you have multiple kids, that is 2 times as much fun, or 3 times or 4 times. So it is overwhelming, but again, no person is an island on this. We literally are all in this together. So, obviously you have your classroom teacher, you have Principal of Vincula, you have myself, but you have a school counselor named Katie Thomas. Hopefully you got an email from her. I believe it was late last week, that had the student support team. So that's Katie Thomas, who's our school counselor, Nina Rice, who's our school psychologist, and then Rachel Screener, who's the student support specialist. All of those make up a team that is there to support your kids in lots of different ways. They do all sorts of wonderful things, both in the classroom and then in small groups and individually as well. So, if there are things that you have going on that you could use some more support, they're there as well for your students. And then I think probably 2 of the most important people that you will get to know over your time at Meadowlark are the school secretaries, Anne Marie and Andrea Rosenzweig, and they are there. They know most answers to most questions, I would say, but they are there. They will know. They will be able to point you in a lot of directions if you are unsure of where to go on many things. But I know that they're fielding a lot of calls on Canvas and absences and just general logistical questions, but they're a great resource as well. So all of those people are there, as well as a team of other support people that are kind of working in the background to make sure that your student is supported. Adrian, anybody you want to add into that list that I've forgotten?
No, that's a pretty comprehensive list. Yeah, you got everybody there, and then we can always add eventually our specialists that you might be able to get to know and connect with. But yeah, your classroom teacher and the school secretaries, they'll give you the brunt of the information. Then, like Anne said, please access our entire team, because we're here for you all.
Well, great. Does anybody, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, but does anybody have any questions or anything that's on their mind that they want to take a minute and we can talk about? No, everybody's good? Well, great. Oh, hi.
Actually, I do. Hi, sorry. I've been in and out with kids, so I didn't have my video on, but thank you for all the tips. I did want to share with everyone, oh, there we go, that this month's meeting with PAC, that we are going to have Flora McCormick. She's our guest speaker, and she's with Sustainable Parenting. She's a counselor. And I think it'll be a really great opportunity for any parents that are wanting additional tips on handling the stress of themselves and their children. So I just wanted to put that out there as well. The next meeting, I believe, is on Thursday, the 22nd, if that's a Thursday. I don't have my calendar in front of me, but that's the next PAC meeting. So I just wanted to share that for parents too.
Great. And Kristen, that's all on Zoom, correct?
Yes, it is. Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for all the information tonight.
Yeah, of course. And just as a plug for PAC, actually, if you're not already following them on Facebook, you guys put a lot of information out there. That's a really good resource for families as well. So yeah, the 22nd is a Thursday.
Okay, great. That's when our meeting is at 6:30.
Well, great. Well, thank you guys so much. And again, if you have any questions or you guys, want to share that we are going to be sending this out. Kristen, actually, I'm going to try to get a link to you to put on Facebook so parents can access the recording from this. And then also we're going to send it to kindergarten teachers to send out as they need to. So other parents who couldn't be here tonight will have an opportunity to hear all the insight. But thank you guys so much and have a great night.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Have a wonderful night.
Good night.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Good night.
Good night.